The creation of the first character for my Gaea project began with a squirrel. No, I'm not kidding, a squirrel. Admittedly, it was an albino squirrel that was so gosh darn cute that you were supernaturally compelled to love it, but in essence, it was a squirrel. This was a weird idea sparked from watching too many kid-friendly anime on Saturday morning cartoon blocks, which always have magical animal sidekicks and mascots. Once I had the animal, I moved into thinking what kind of world this animal would fit in. Since I was just getting into D&D at the time, I ended up making a generic D&D world, and in deciding what kind of character to make, I decided on an elf because I thought humans were boring, but humans with pointy ears were for some reason super interesting. I named him Elrith. Basically, I took two word parts out of the Silmarillion's appendix on the Elvish language that sounded good and mashed them together. I don't even remember what his name means anymore, nor does it really matter. Along with this character came the image of him coming home from a walk in the woods to find his family murdered, and the only thing left of his home was his pet squirrel. The details were quickly filled in with a loving attention to gore and brutality, because that's the sort of thing you love when you're in high school, largely because it upsets your mom. Without much more thought than this, I immediately jumped into trying to tell a story. Because I was still pretty green at writing, and amateur storytelling imitates what it sees in other stories, Elrith's story immediately became about revenge. It was also rambling, full of superfluous non-characters who existed only to be a source of conflict, read violence, remember I was in high school, and an overabundance of weird, dangling plot threads that didn't go anywhere. Elrith was a wizard because I liked magic, but not a traditional wizard because that was boring. No, he was a special kind of wizard that only elves could be, and his sorcery was... Well, I won't lie, it was wholeheartedly ripped from an anime I'd seen a few months earlier, which had some stuff I thought was really cool. I didn't know anything about the cultural implications of what I was ripping off, it just looked cool to me. The only saving grace of this original work was that it ended with Elrith's revenge costing him everything, leaving him alienated from the rest of the world because he'd lived for so long with nothing but his anger driving him that he no longer knew how to fit into normal society. Not the most original observation, I admit, but remember, I was in high school. I feel the ability to carry any idea to its actual logical extension should be applauded. At least a little bit. Put that story on a shelf for now, because that's what I did at this point. For a good 10 years, I never thought about it, but I did continue to develop the world and all the elements of it. Then one day, I find a picture I drew of this character back in high school and some of the original manuscript. They were less than impressive. But the core of the character appealed to me, so I thought I'd devote some time to it again. By this point, what had originally been Elvish wizardry had evolved more into Elvish religious practices, so Elrith changed from a wizard to a cleric. But he was a cleric who didn't invoke miracles because, despite still believing in the Elvish god, he'd lost his own connection to the divine by living a life against its principles. Since revenge stories are overplayed, something I've learned through my experience with studying literature, I decided to shift Elrith's revenge plot to more of a background detail. By the present of the current timeline, Elrith had already gone through his whole revenge scheme, found it accomplished nothing except ruining his life, and was now in the lonely aftermath of those wasted decades, trying to find new purpose for his existence by helping others. His role as a main character has shifted to more of a mentor figure, though mentor to who I still haven't quite settled on. He's someone who's been through the trials of life, seen the way they can devastate you if you give in to anger, and come out the other side, empty and alone, wanting to create a better legacy by helping others avoid the same mistakes he made himself. And voila! That's how Elrith came to be the character he is today. Notice how he still has the squirrel. Isn't it cute?